Good morning. The special City Council meeting of December 10th, 2022 will come to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nusma, Mayor Biss,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Suffredin, Councilmember Rebel,
Here.
Councilmember Reed, Councilmember Heracariz,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly, Councilmember Harris.
Here, I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is public comment. There is nobody here to give public comment in person, but two have signed up online. We'll begin with Mike Vasilko with 3 minutes.
Thank you. And that's the first thing to bring to the attention of the council, which is pretty obvious, of course. There wasn't enough public notice for this meeting, very important meeting, I think. And it's a shame that I guess I'm one of two people who signed up, and I don't know where the other 74,000 people are, but I'm sure they just didn't know about it. So that's number one, in my opinion, for your goals, is to make a much stronger effort to encourage and expand public participation in city government. That's got to be a goal, because the obvious is you're doing just the opposite. You're working to knowingly or unknowingly, you're working to diminish or exclude public participation. And I just came across this meeting by accident, basically. The second recommendation I have that I feel strongly about, I've written about many, many times. I've tried to encourage all the council members, including Council Member Nuisma, who I'm not sure is there tonight or today, this morning, sorry. That climate action, I mean, it's got to be raised to the top of your list. We have a very weak budget for climate action in 2023. I hope that's going to change on Monday evening somewhat at the council meeting. That it should be a much higher priority than it is. There was a resolution in May that you all were unanimously supported, designating a climate emergency. You haven't acted as if there's a climate emergency. We have a plan. I think the environmental board has done a great job trying to frame a plan. They've gotten little support from council, very little, despite there's an article I'll send to Council Member Ravel and to Nuisma and Kara Pratt, where they're quoted back in May saying, how the forecast for climate action is so desperately needed. And that was it. That is where the exclamation point ended. Since then, it's been very weak. The 2023 budget is embarrassing compared to other communities who are promoting real climate action.
15 seconds.
Climate action needs to be at the top of your priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker for public comment is Leslie Williams, who I believe is not in the Zoom at this time. Let me just check one more time to make sure. We have another sign up, so we're now prepared to hear from either Leslie Williams or Nick Korzanowski. So those two speakers who have signed up are not in the Zoom and available to give comment at this time. And so that concludes public comment. We now move to call of the wards, beginning with Councilmember Burns.
No report.
Councilmember Ravel.
No report.
Councilmember Reed.
Just point of information, are we going into executive session? Why are we doing call of the wards now?
Just to get everything out of the way. I do not expect us to go into executive session at all today.
Oh, okay, okay. No report.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
No report.
Councilmember Kelly.
No report.
Councilmember Harris.
No report.
And Councilmember Nguyen.
No report.
This brings us to the main item of the day. So first of all, I want to thank Dr. Gila Kwesi-Logan for joining us for what I think is a really pivotal set of exercises for this council. Our plan is to spend the next several hours in a moderated and meticulously designed discussion together as a group, and as I indicated a moment ago, in an open session to set goals. We, I think, broadly agree on kind of what we're trying to do here, and as a result of that, sometimes I think take for granted an assumption that we're on the same page when in fact we aren't always, and because there's so many ideas that come from folks in this body without an agreed upon direction, we don't always, I think, have the best mechanism in place to allocate our time in a way that's aligned with what we collectively believe and what our constituents believe need to be our priorities. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I think it's very, very important for our community and for our work. I want to thank you again, Dr. Logan, for generously agreeing to lead us through this. And let me ask you to come to the podium and tell us about the day.
All right. Oh, yep. All right. Good morning. Okay. Can you all hear me okay? All right. All right. So, good morning, you all. It's an honor to be here and looking forward to rolling my sleeves up with you all so we can make some progress and make this happen in terms of setting goals for our community. I just want to qualify up front. You know, I am an Evanstonian, as I know you all know that, but I'm not here per se as an Evanstonian. I just want to put that on the record. I'm here as a consultant, and I intentionally will not chime in on the topics because I'm one voice from the community, whereas this is for the council, and I don't want my bias to play into your decision. So I'm intentionally keeping that to the side, just to put that out there. So while we are getting situated, I would like to ask, not so much an introduction, because I know you all know one another. I believe you all know me, I know you all, but more a reintroduction just by a couple of points. And for one, I'm going to ask if you can give your name just to make sure I have the pronunciation correct. And also, if you could, in doing that though, just give in one sentence, this is going to be practice for our session today, being brief, but in one sentence, if you can recall, like your purpose for serving in this position that you're in. It's not a test. It's just, don't take that too heavily because that's a lot, but just in one sentence, what brings you to serve in the seat that you are in? So if you could share that, that would be, so your name, what brings you to your service, one word that describes how you're feeling coming into today's session. And I understand this is public, so you can take this next question as you choose, but one personal unknown. But don't take that too personal. And the reason why I put that out, and just if you can just bear with me today, this will all make sense. But I just want us to, because it's important that as we engage in these activities, that we engage with one another as human beings and as community members, and not just as a council. So when I say the personal unknown, that's just the opportunity to put your humanity out there. So if you could just give your name and what brings you to your service, and a personal unknown, and one word that describes how you're feeling coming into today's session in very brief terms. And you all can choose your order.
I'll go. There we go. I'll go first. Chrissy Harris. What brings me to service is the love of my community, being born and raised here, and a personal unknown. Now, my mom will disagree, but I hate bugs.
All right. And I appreciate that fine example of being brief. And who do you pass it to?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to pass it. Juan. Sorry.
Putting me on the spot here. Juan Hidakatis, 9th Ward Council member. I am here to represent my community. One word to describe how I'm feeling is hopeful. Personal unknown. I grew up in a really small rural farming community in the country, in Wisconsin. So.
Great, thank you. And you pass it to whom next?
I'll go. Keep going in counterclockwise. Eleanor, sorry.
Eleanor Ravel. Certainly what brought me to the council, I came directly from Citizens Greener Evanston, so what's brought me to the council is to make a bigger impact on improving the sustainability of our whole community. I like hopeful about today, and I have no idea about the last question.
Personal shoe size. I mean, it could be if it's don't like I said, don't take it too personal.
I'm at a loss for words.
Okay, well I'll take that as a personal unknown.
Well, I can go next. I'm Daniel Biss. I'm honored to serve as mayor. I sought to do this because I was excited about Evanston being a model for innovation and justice. I'm excited for today. And if you'll forgive me going a little deep in the personal unknown, I don't think a lot of people know that while my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, my wife's grandfather was in the SS, and it's quite something about two different families coming together.
Interesting. Thank you.
I'm Melissa Wynn, and I take time to chew on issues, so coming up with a sentence so quickly is hard. I think it's my love of public service and how much I enjoy solving problems for people that brings me up here. I'm hopeful. That was the one word I wrote down for today. And personal unknown. Some people might know this. I went to high school in Bangkok, Thailand.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
Can we have an online volunteer, whether council member?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. Hi, and I'm heading in soon, so I'll see you all in person shortly. But Devon Reed, council member for the 8th Ward. What brings me here is similar to Mayor Biss. I see Evanston as a place that can serve as a model for other municipalities in governance and as an innovation hub. And then most importantly within that is to represent and serve the folks who are least proximate to power. That is why I am here. And an unknown. Thanks to Evanston now, very little about my life is unknown. But I don't know. I'm for a blank there as well, like Eleanor.
Okay.
So there's, I think council members Kelly and Burns are still online.
I'm happy to talk.
Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. So I ran because I'm really hoping that we can do a better job of representing the needs and the interest of our Evanston residents, with a particular eye on our low and middle income residents. And I also believe that Evanston truly can be a leader for cities across this nation. Let's see, a personal unknown. I was born and raised till I was 10 on the Mississippi in Rock Island, Illinois. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Bobby Burns. I ran to achieve transformational and observable change, specifically in the Fifth Ward, and I learned how to make an omelet at Haven Middle School.
Thank you. Yeah. I sure do.
My name is Stephanie Mendoza. I'm the city clerk. I'm here because I understand what it's like personally, and for my parents to not have representation, to not feel represented, to not have anyone come to us, when we've needed help the most. A personal unknown, I grew up in East Tennessee, in a little town, Hamlin County. And prior to being there, I was actually living in Mexico and Tijuana. So two completely different places to grow up as a teenager and then as a young child.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Luke Stowe. It's an honor to be city manager for City of Evanston, and my family has long service of public service over many years, and my goal is to ensure that I'm creating the best possible atmosphere and environment for our employees to be able to deliver quality services in an equitable fashion for residents of Evanston. And I was born on the 4th of July as well.
Oh, wow. All right, great. Thank you. And thank you for engaging in that. And also, as we engage in this discussion, I also wanted to put that out there because it's important as we have this discussion that we remember, each other's humanity, but also like the purpose for which you all are serving. So just to kind of put that out there, because I know as things get tough, we can lose sight of that sometimes. And I'm saying we collectively can lose sight of that. So I just wanted for you all to put that out in the shared space, the purpose for which you're serving, and just that as a reminder underlying today's discussion as we try to establish setting some goals. So thank you all for that. Okay, so for our time today, that was our warm-up. So I'm going to go through the objectives. We're going to talk about some community agreements in terms of how we want to engage in today's discussion. We'll briefly view the 2019-2020 goals, and then we'll delve into the core of today's topic, and that is planning goals moving forward, and then developing metrics in terms of some benchmarks and what does the progress look like, and put out next steps. And before we delve into that, let me say, so I know you all have lunch at 12 being served. Is that right, Daniel? Yeah. So it's your choice if you want to stop and have lunch, or if you want to have a working lunch. We can make the call at that time. We'll have breaks as well, but by all means, we're all adults, and excuse yourself as you need to take care of what you need to take care of. Okay. So essentially, there's two objectives, but I broke it down into 4 parts. So we want to, as a result of today's session, we want to establish a short list of 3 to 6 approximately 3 to 6 shared prioritized goals. So if we can get to that point, I feel we've made some progress. And with that, we want to make sure that we define the goals and just, in very brief terms, and to prioritize the goals. And with that, we want to develop some benchmarks measuring the progress towards accomplishing those goals. And I would kind of wrap this in the statement saying that this is draft mode. Okay, so this is not the end goal. It is draft mode. So understanding that after today's session, some things are subject to change, and that's totally fine. And as we engage in today's discussion, please ask questions as you all have them. Okay. So community agreements. Please understand that this is not crafted just for you all. I do this in all the sessions relative to what we're doing. So when I say community agreements, I'm referring to a shared agreement between council members about how we want to work together today and how we want to communicate, how we want to work towards developing consensus, and to protect today as a safe space and as a productive space. Now, out of this possibly may come some fodder for values that you all might want to consider moving forward, but this is not a values discussion today, the community agreements. So values may come out of that. This may lead into that, but this is not the purpose for that. So I'd like to ask you all, as I share these with you, this is, it's important that we have a common agreement on what these community agreements are. So I'm going to suggest a few. If you have any questions, please pose them. If you have concerns, please state them. And if there's anything you want to add to this, we'll do that in real time so that this is something that we can agree to in terms of how we're going to move forward having this discussion today. So one, can you still hear me okay? Okay, great. So one part is that as we engage in the discussion, and I know the participation will be here, but it's important that if someone says something that is not understood, that instead of making assumptions, ask the clarifying questions to understand what it is they mean by what they said, right? And expect some discomfort and accept it. Not that that's not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. It has negative connotations, I think. However, discomfort comes with having difficult conversations. Discomfort comes with growth. It comes with development. It comes with stepping into new opportunities. So it is not a negative thing. And also non-closure, because we very likely will not get through everything today. That does not mean we did not succeed. But I know in our culture here, we like to have completion and closure to things, and some of us struggle when things are incomplete or unfinished. And if that's the case, again, I'm asking you to work on accepting that, because that is part of the territory very commonly. Number two, to be aware. I say mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me explain that. So mic check, you come to the mic, right? And you say mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2 to see if it's working so that you can speak. I know some of us may not speak as much as other people may speak. So if you tend to be on the quieter side of things, do a mic check so that you can step into the mic and have your voice being heard just like everyone else's. At the same time, mic check means if you are on the other end of the spectrum and you're one of the talkers, to check your own mic, to check yourself, because we need balanced discussion. And I know we all have our tendencies. Some like to listen and observe more. If that's the case, that's not wrong. But to engage in this discussion, it's important that you have space to have your voice heard. And part of my job is to facilitate that so everyone can have their voice being heard. So if that's wherever you fall within that, please step into that. If you need to step to the mic a little bit more and speak up, or if you need to check yourself from speaking too much, please do that. And my job as a facilitator is to help you all through that process. Engage in shared humanity and community before council. That's what I said previously. Oftentimes when engaging in conversations where people have strong viewpoints, very strong feelings, it's not uncommon that we kind of forget the basic humanity that we all share. And that's important in terms of how we engage with one another. So I'm just want to encourage you all to continue intentionally to engage with one another as people who care. I mean, you all are human beings who care about what you're doing, who care about our community, and that's why you're here. And from there, we're all part of this community. And before your council members, your community members, and to be trustworthy. So you might have to earn someone's trust, but also asking that you have trust and that you can give trust. The trust building is essential, as we all know, to forming any relationship and having any kind of productive discussion. We have to trust the intentions of one another. We have to trust that we're not going to be attacked. We have to trust that our viewpoints are going to be heard and respected, even if not understood or agreed upon. It's really important that we are trustworthy in terms of how we're communicating with one another and how we're expressing our viewpoints. The third one is to hold yourself accountable, excuse me, and to listen to understand and not to react. So people who work very closely together, as you all do, and as you get to know one another very commonly, you know, we tend, as human nature, to have a tendency to react to what people say as opposed to respond. And react, I mean, like we get triggered, like that knee-jerk reaction. We speak typically more emotionally in the spur of the moment. Sometimes we might say things that we regret or that were not intended, as opposed to someone says something, again, ask for clarity if you don't understand, but then to not react, but to respond, meaning, you know, step back, pause for a moment, think about that, and speak with intentionality. That's the responding as opposed to the reacting. And let's all share the commitment to reach consensus, because this process will not be perfect. The discussion will not be perfect. The goals will not be perfect. The metrics. However, we need a commitment to building consensus so that we can move this process forward. So as you all move forward with this process, so does our city and our community. Number 4, to be forgiving and accepting, not just of others, although you all, we need that today, but of yourself, right? Because we might make mistakes. We might say something that came out the wrong way. And I know many of us tend to be our own worst critics. So just to be also forgiving of yourselves, assume the best and not the worst in one another, and accept without defending and debating. We can develop consensus without having to. Everything does not have to be a debate towards developing consensus. Debating and consensus building are technically two different things. And we want to make sure that we're focused not on defending and debating as opposed to developing consensus. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. The 5th one is we want to stay focused. So keep your focus on the topic and the process of goal setting, and not to get caught up into the narratives and the justifications and the histories. And I mean, we all have so much to offer towards that end that can easily derail our conversation. So let's stay focused on the process of goal setting and practice what I call radical listening, like really listening to not just what's said, but what someone means, and to try to extract meaning from what's said and what's shared, to gain new understanding. Again, that speaks to the whole idea of listening to understand and not just reacting. And then lastly, you all have the right to be right, to be who you are. Because again, we're not here to attack anyone personally. We're here to come to a common consensus. And you have the right to be who you are, even when being vulnerable, even when making mistakes. But we are who we are, and we're not here to appease one another, but we're here to present ourselves and represent our communities. And with that, you know, show up as you are and as you do. And you have the right to speak in draft mode. You know, it does not have to be perfect in order for it to be said, right? So don't overthink, don't overprocess. And in speaking in draft mode, again, it's important that we have grace and that we are forgiving of one another. If they misspeak or if they make a mistake, we ask for clarity so that we can have a constructive conversation towards accomplishing our goal today of you all establishing goals. So these were some that came to mind in terms of what I thought might be relevant for today's discussion. But I would like to hear from you all if you have concerns about any of these, if you have questions, if there's anything you feel that you need to add. So let me rephrase that. Is there anything that you feel you need that's not here in order for you to best engage today, where you can say what needs to be said, and you can best represent the communities that you serve?
While folks are thinking, I'll just say that as you were going through these and reflecting on my own way of interacting with the world, I think there's a lot for me to learn here, and I think a lot of tools that I think could help us all have discussions that would be really, I think, more productive and respectful and human than what we sometimes fall into. So thank you for sharing these.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I wanted to go on record and say that I really appreciated these. And the one that really resonates with me being a newer council member is the right to speak in draft mode. I'm always very apprehensive because I know I'm 2 years behind everyone else. And it's like, I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to misrepresent. So I really like that, being able to speak in draft mode, but still being conscious and careful with what not just throw it out there like, oh, that was draft mode. But
yeah, it's not an excuse, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate that as well, because that too speaks to our humanity. Because otherwise, we will silence ourselves as a result of, again, I'm new on the council and I don't want to make a mistake or say the wrong thing or show up in the wrong way, and we often will silence ourselves, and we don't want that as well. So I appreciate that comment. Yeah, because it's just really important that we have that type of grace towards one another. And when I say the humanity, the fact that you're newest to the council, but at some point everyone was new. And if everyone else can remember what that's like, being new and coming in, as you did, if we can just have the empathy for that, that speaks to the humanity aspect of it. So thank you for that comment. Anyone else? We won't do a vote, but I'm going to assume your silence to be consent. So if any comments, any questions, any concerns, anything you feel you need that's not on here in order to feel protected, to feel safe, and to be able to show up as you are, and again, represent the communities that you serve. Anything else?
Looks good to me. So
okay, thank you.
Could I just check in to make sure that those who are online were able to see what they needed to see, or at least have the information that they need to move forward?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. The only thing that I really need here, I just feel that we are lacking in community presence, but we'll continue forward. I feel this should have been given, greater notice, and maybe we consider running a second session with more notice. So as a representative, I do want the community to be listening and participating. Thank you.
And just in the interest of housekeeping, both council members Burns and Reed have now entered the building, and so I think Councilmember Kelly is and Reed also just walked in.
Oh, they're in transit.
Yeah, so I think Councilmember Kelly is now the only person who's fully online, just as we're yeah.
Got it. Okay, great. Okay, then we'll go back to the deck and we'll move it forward. Okay. And, we'll often revisit these throughout the process as a reminder if it's ever relevant, and you all can feel free to do the same as well. So first, I'd like to begin by, in a sense, stepping back before we go forward. And these were the adopted 2019-2020 city goals. As you see before you, I'm assuming you all have seen this. I don't know how recently you've seen this. This is the abbreviated version. There's a more detailed version that's also on the website. But I thought this might be a good starting point. Just first, if you could just take a look at that. And do I need to read these for the sake of the public, or no? And just by a show of hands, how many council members here were on the council in 2019-2020? So 2. And I think actually, so in total there would be what, 4, 3 in total? Right, okay, so basically a third, right, okay. So just first, any initial thoughts when you see this? Any initial comments, any initial reactions? Yes.
My impression is that those are all still really important, but they don't represent my priorities for how I would, say
Sure.
which ones are the most important, for example, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Any other initial reaction?
Earlier, I heard you mention, that we would almost prioritize the priorities. And I look at, this list, or I think about the list that we're going to develop today, and I don't know if we can rank, once they're there, they're just priorities, I think. And it's hard to say which of the priorities is more of a priority than the others, given that we could have a list of likely 100 things if we were just to say what are we hearing from the community, what's important. But so I just want to.
Okay. Does anyone know, is this in the order of priority, or is this random?
No, I don't think it was in any order of priority.
No, and the last one is something that was added more recently.
Since
Yeah.
1920?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I also think, me personally looking at this, when we have goals, there are no measurable numbers. Like, how do you measure expanding affordable housing options? Is that 2 affordable housing units? Is that percentage of folks that, are not in? So a lot of these, I think, I'm sure we were all like working towards these, but I think it's very hard to say you have accomplished something if you don't have like a set number or a measurable goal.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, I want to go even one step further in that direction. I think they're all really important, but I think they vary dramatically in how clear they even are. Like not only how many affordable housing, but affordable for whom? What's affordable? What exactly does enhanced community development mean? And so that, I think that might make this a little bit difficult, a document to truly utilize as a roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And again, this was just to kind of stimulate some food for thought, as opposed to saying that this was our starting point. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to, again, go back before we go forward. And these are very abbreviated. In the actual, on the document that's on the website, there's the breakdown with metrics for each one of these. And there's a lot more detail there that I didn't put up here. So, and as I'm assuming we all know about SMART goals, right? I mean, but that's important, right? That is specific, but it's measurable, right? That it's attainable. It's realistic, but what's that time frame? Like, how do we gauge that? So as we engage in our conversation today, we want to make sure we keep that in mind as well. Any other initial thoughts on this, or can you all speak at all, just in brief terms, if you felt or you feel any of these were accomplished over this time, and or what worked well, if anything?
I would say, as an observer, as the clerk the last term, and I think the closest that we've come to is maybe stabilizing the long-term city finances. I know we're still in a rocky place potentially, but compared to, we look at 2017, 2018, 2019, I think there's a lot more. We're now at our 16.66% goal and above, which we hadn't been at for a while, and so that'd be the closest one to being not accomplished, but we're stabilized. Yeah.
Progress made towards.
Yeah, progress made.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I think we made some progress on all of these fronts, but then the pandemic hit. And so the pandemic sort of put all these not off to the side, but the pandemic took precedence. And so a number of these things couldn't be worked on with the same level of vigor and attention as we had originally intended in 2019.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you were on the council then, and you're saying that there's some progress was made on each one of these.
There was attention and efforts made, and I'd say some progress made on all of them.
Okay.
But obviously, they're goals, and they're not going to be achieved in a single year.
Right. And if any were not accomplished, other than COVID, any thoughts as to why? What were the challenges, just from your perspective, to the best of your knowledge?
I think having observed council for a while, and then now that I'm elected, I'm not sure the goals are discussed on a regular basis. I think it's really important to bring this to every meeting and to refer to it every meeting, especially the more kind of detailed version that you mentioned earlier. So I think that's the one note I would have moving forward. We should. I think I was in Ohio at a conference, and one municipality talked about having stuff like this, like literally posted on the wall of the council chambers. Like they're always referring to it and going back to it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it really, in a sense, the goal should be almost like a tool that you're using, or a roadmap. I mean, a reminder. And as you delve into the work and the day-to-day and the grind of everything, it's easy to lose. Just like, driving your car. If you don't have your end goal, your end destination in mind, you kind of can drive anywhere, right? And anywhere might get you there if you don't know where you're going. So that's an important point to remember and be reminded of what those goals are. And I would encourage you all to revisit those goals on the website that are broken down in detail with the actual metrics that were there, because there may be some that's there that's relevant to how you all want to move forward. Some of it might be irrelevant, but it would be good if you all were on the same page in terms of taking a look at that and after today's session, and see what you feel as you sift through that, essentially. Any other initial thoughts on that? Does anyone feel any, and again, this is not a vote, but just a discussion, feel any of these might be relevant towards moving forward in setting our goals? Yes. Which ones come to mind?
I'd say I think we need to be more detailed, but expanding affordable housing, I think, would certainly be carried over.
Okay.
The Climate Action and Resilience Plan, for sure.
Okay.
I'd say ensuring equity in city operations.
Okay, great.
I think they're all relevant.
Think they're all relevant? Okay.
Yeah. Worth bringing forward.
Sure. And that's where the discussion of priorities comes into place, right? but we're not there yet, so this is good.
Yeah, because I'll slide job creation over as well.
Okay. All right, great. Then keep that in mind. We can revisit the slide at any point. And as we move forward and really delve into the goal setting part of this session, I just want to, please don't take it as me talking down to you all. I just want to level set as we engage in the discussion moving forward and talk about, for one, just some of the challenges that might be at play in terms of trying to develop consensus towards a common set of goals. So some challenges that might come into play in terms of how it impacts you personally and how you might engage in the process, and in terms of what your thoughts are. So one, the various aspects of our identity. As I look at the council, think about some of the racial differences, ethnic differences, gender, socioeconomic, and age. There's diversity among these elements here on the council today. But diversity itself can be very challenging. But the challenge is what we bring to it. The diversity is not the challenge, it's what we bring to it. So these elements are can be leveraged towards goal setting. We bring perspectives, we bring value to the discussion based on some of these differences. So difference is not bad, but difference within itself does not bring the value. It's how do we galvanize around those differences, and how do we leverage the value that these differences bring to our decision making. So I see this element of diversity because, again, depending on our experiences, that's going to impact what we feel is important to us or to our community based on how we were impacted by these growing up and the communities in which we reside in today. Then also COVID, as it was mentioned, right? Obviously that's a big one, and that's not past tense. That's still present tense as well. Post George Floyd, or the so-called, summer of racial reckoning and healing, the so-called, right? But that's, as we know, a lot changed in our society that is still at play today, and that impacts different people in different ways and potentially may play itself out in the process of establishing goals and what's important to you, what do you feel is important to your constituents. And these are some factors that might play into that. And then where you grew up. If you grew up in Evanston or not is not the point, but just wherever you grew up. However, where you live in Evanston. As we know, Evanston is very diverse, but we have our elements of segregation, based on class and based on race. And that as well may impact how we engage in this process and what we think is important and what we may think is not as important, whereas someone else may see that differently based on some of these factors. So I just wanted to put that out there for food for thought. Again, just ask questions or jump in as we go. So as we talk about consensus, again, just kind of level setting, not that you all don't know this, but we're not talking about 100% agreement on everything. That's not what we're here to do. That's the perfectionism mentality, and we don't want to step into that. We're not voting on competing opinions, Robert's rules, for example. We're not debating and bargaining to win. This should be win-win, not win-lose. Okay, that's important towards developing consensus for our community, It's not going with the lowest common denominator. That's not developing consensus. Like, where's the value in the lowest common denominator? It may be there, but not necessarily. And it's not just going along with who has the strongest voice, who speaks the most, who has the strongest opinions, who's been on the council the longest, or any of those factors. That's not consensus. However, we all know that those factors play into how we relate to one another. So this is not consensus. And what I would like to suggest is the idea of what it is. A group reaches consensus when all the members agree upon a single alternative. Single alternative. It might not be your alternative. It may not be any one person's alternative, but it might be a synthesized one. And each group member can honestly say that I believe you understand my viewpoint and that I understand yours. So it's about understanding. And then whether or not I prefer this decision, I support it because it was reached fairly and openly, and it is in the best interest for the process at the moment. It's the best solution given the moment. Again, it's not about perfectionism. Today, we are essentially developing a draft. So we don't want to get stuck on that. We want to be able to make progress towards consensus. And I just wanted to provide this framework and the fact that the 100% rule, that's not going to get us anywhere today, as opposed to like the 70% rule. Okay? Are we all good with that? All right. In my last framing about consensus, so there's a number of barriers that can potentially get in the way. So for some people, there's a block. Someone puts out an idea or a goal that they suggest, and it's just a strong disagreement. That's one reason. But then when we have clarity on that, then we can have discussion around that. Another one is a stand aside, right? Well, I can't support that goal because whatever your reasons might be, but because we need to do this, I'll go ahead and vote for it. Like, that's not the spirit of consensus, right? Because that's kind of, it's almost giving in to the process. And what happens is resentment, at the very least, resentment trails behind if we fall into this stand aside mentality. Reservations. Some people say, I have some, but I'm willing to let it pass. I mean, that's normal. But if you let it pass, does it come back to kind of gnaw at you or to haunt you, if you will? As opposed to, agreement is the idea that, I support the goal and I'm willing to implement it. I'm willing. The willingness is important. The willingness is important there. However, consensus is the agreement and the will to support it. And that's what we want to work towards. Okay, not all agreeing on the same thing, but agreeing on the alternative and the willingness to support that goal in the best interest of our community. Okay? Are we good with that? Because the rest of the time is yours to talk. I've kind of done most of my talking right here. Any questions or comments? Or Claire or anyone else online? I guess he's the only one at this point. Okay.
I guess I hate to do this, but I'm curious about it. Thinking about the kind of norms and expectations that we've discussed, I can envision myself straying away from them. What's your vision of how we can work together to hold ourselves accountable to conform with the kind of shared expectations that we've established?
Mm-hmm. Can I reflect that question to the council? That's a great question. What are your thoughts on that? I could tell you mine and my approach, but what are your thoughts? Can you rephrase that now that they know the question's coming to them?
What steps can we take as this morning progresses to make sure that we're having the conversation in keeping with the principles and expectations that we've agreed to?
I think being honest first with ourselves. Why are we feeling or being where we are? And then with ourselves, being honest, I think is the first step.
And that honesty goes towards building that trust, right? Okay. Other thoughts?
One of the points was assuming good intent.
Yeah.
And that's something like I've learned a lot from my wife. She started using that like in her work, and and that's always like when, especially if you're having difficult conversations, it's always good to check yourself, and that's one that like I just use in like my personal life. So
Good intent, and assuming, the good intent in one another, because, despite when we disagree, to whatever degree that we disagree, but I believe we all have a shared understanding that we have the best interest of our community at hand. And like that's the commonality that we can't lose sight of. Also, speaking to your question, Daniel, we can't lose sight of that as we engage in these conversations and as they get challenging and as they get difficult, to not forget the fact that we all here, you all care. That's why you're serving as you do, because you care. I mean, that's the commonality, and you care about our community. Now, we all understand there's communities within our community, but we're talking about the capital C, our community. And that's the commonality that we cannot forget. And I will help to remind us of when necessary. Other thoughts to Daniel's question?
I guess I think one of the most powerful ones is just not needing to get to completion on everything. I think that's something that I need to remind myself about all the time, just even in my personal life. But when I'm able to implement that, plus a pause before you speak, right? A pause, a reflection before you speak, plus not trying to get to completion in that moment. Sometimes it's even more powerful to just walk away or step aside or wait to the next day, put a week between that discussion and when you bring it back up again. So that's what I'll be using personally.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Thanks. And if I need to encourage someone to step off of the mic, I'll just, as you're speaking, I'll just raise my hand, and that's what that means, just so that you all know that's the nonverbal signal. And for those who need to step to the mic, I'll just call you to the mic. Okay. But Daniel, also just for me as well, my other response to your question is to adhere to the process. I've laid out a process that we're going to engage in and adhere to the process, adhere to the time parameters of the process. So when they say trust the process, but it's also trusting the time parameters, and that we have a limited amount of time and we can't get it all in within that time if we're seeking for perfection and total completion in order to make progress moving forward. We're going to be stuck. Okay, this is a draft that we are developing here today. All right. Any other thoughts to Daniel's question or anything else that you'd like to add to it? No? Okay. Ready to roll your sleeves up? All right. Good. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. And after this portion, we'll take a quick break. I'm going to ask if you can take, 5-10 minutes, maybe at most. And if you could just jot down, and again, this is draft mode, so don't feel like you have to go search the website and for the perfect language or thesaurus and dictionary.com, or none of that. But individual brainstorming in terms of what goals do you identify as, on one hand, what are you passionate about? But it doesn't end there. It's more so, or just as much as, what's critical and essential to our community. Because you may be passionate about something that's not as critical to the community as you feel that it is. And that might be hard to differentiate. But that's the first portion. I'm going to ask you to take about 10 minutes to do that. What we'll do is we'll list them out on the white paper, and we'll get into groups, and then we'll discuss them, and eventually we're going to define what some of those goals are. So just so we have a clarity of definition before we delve into which ones are prioritized, which ones do we include or not include, let's make sure we have a common understanding of what those goals are that you all think are important to our community, that you're passionate about. Make sure we have a common definition of what those mean. By definition, I mean a sentence, one sentence, but we're not there yet. That's where we're going. I'm simply asking you to take 5 to 10 minutes to jot down for your own notes goals that you feel that are important to our community, critical to our community, and / that you're passionate about. Okay? Any questions on that?
Just as many as we think of.
As many as you think of. This is brainstorming. Yep, individual brainstorming. So no filters on your individual notes. Okay, thank you. So we'll take a few more minutes. Okay, we'll give it one more minute. Okay, about 10 more seconds, if you can wrap it up. Okay. So what I'm going to ask, instead of me doing the writing, I'm going to ask you all to get out of your seats and have you all write on the white paper. So what I want to ask, so take a look at what you wrote, okay, and you can choose what you put on the paper, obviously. But I'm going to ask if we can use all three of these and jot down, doesn't have to be in order of priority, but the goals that you listed, if it's the ones you're passionate about, you think are most critical to our community, if you can list these up here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you list them. Then we're going to see if we can kind of group or categorize any of them. And then from there, we want to agree on, 5 to 8 or so that we think we might want to actually delve into defining and perhaps prioritizing. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so there are markers up here. So and this is the easy part. So this shouldn't take long. So if you can come on up, and there's markers here for each easel. And yes, question?
I was just going to say, how are we going to engage our online people?
So we can have, it's just Claire? Yes, so we can have her chime in and we can jot hers down for her. Great question. Thank you. So if we could take, 5 minutes or so just to do this portion. There's no judgment on penmanship or spelling. We're not worried about that. As long as it's legible.
Well, that sounds like judgment about penmanship, doesn't it?
Well, it has to be practical. It needs to be legible. That's the practicality. And the discussion is coming, so if you can go ahead and jot those down, that would be great. Because we got a little bit of a late start. I want to make sure we can get out by 5 o'clock. Okay, now I got you moving. 4:35. Oh, thank you. If someone put one that you have, just put a +1 next to it. Even if the wording is slightly different. Yeah, thank you. I forgot to mention that. Just put a +1 next to it. So, in other words, yeah, what he said. That's to be expected. It really is. Brainstorming, yeah, that's right. Is Councilmember Kelly, is she able to chime in at any? Okay. Yeah. All right. And make sure you look at the other easels once you complete your thoughts on paper. Again, don't forget to check the other easels to see if there's duplication. So when you all are finished, I'm going to ask if you can have a chair just in front of this mic, in front of the easels. Just grab a chair. So there's a lot of aspiration in this group. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. And again, if you can just grab a chair, have a seat anywhere in this area by the easels, by this mic. So once you're sitting, that's when I know you're done. And then I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers, 1 for each easel. You can sit next to the easel. You can wheel your chair over there. It's fine. But what I'm going to ask you all to do is we're going to read these off, and we want to hear the commonalities. We want to cross out or we want to group the commonalities. We want to group them and see how we can synthesize to kind of minimize this list. Any that are redundant, or I say if you feel they're irrelevant, I would say let's put those in the parking lot as opposed to throwing them away, right? We'll put those in the parking lot, but I'm going to ask one person from each easel to read them out, and the other 2 people at the other 2 easels to look at those and see if there's any duplication. Man, they're putting you to work today. Is that part of the initiation? Is he the second youngest on the? But trying to figure out how it's working here.
No, I was gonna go there. And are you good or do you want me to? Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just trying to organize.
So, okay, we have, well, let me see. I need,
He's still writing.
oh, look at that. Councilmember Reed volunteered to, man, I really appreciate that. Since you volunteered to read those? Excellent. Councilmember Burns, look, he just can't wait. Okay, great. So now we have our 3 volunteers. He's owning this one. I appreciate that. Okay, so if we could start here, and again, yes. Yep, go ahead.
Hypocritically named that Councilmember Kelly is on the Zoom, so we should make an effort to use the mic for everything.
Okay, so I'll give you, we'll pass this mic, and I can step to that mic. So again, just simply read, no explanations, no justifications, just read what's on the list. As the list is being read, we want to look at the other 2 lists to see if anything can be crossed out because it's the same, or if we want to think there's some similarity, how we might be able to group them. Okay?
All right. Starting from the top, increase amount of affordable housing units by X amount. Increase amount of affordable housing units by X amount.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to use, if I can use that as an example. So there's duplication there. The wording is different. Some of these are goals. Some of these are objectives. Some of these are almost, I think I'm even seeing some metrics. I mean, there's a variety. We're not here to discern that. We'll get caught the next hour and a half talking about that. But so hence we want to, if we can group affordable housing as a category, just as an example, that would be great, and then we can detail it when we talk about the metrics.
Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah.
So
yeah, the affordable housing. Yes.
Yes, we're going to refine these.
Okay.
Yes, so this is still very loose. So you're checking it off on the other 2? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if there's a key word that you feel is relevant on yours, circle it.
Yeah. All right. Affordable housing program for city employees. Unhoused community in Evanston at a low number. Equity considered in all city decisions. Have cities.
Sorry, can we pause there?
Yep.
Because I'm seeing affordable housing as a common theme. There's other details to it. I'm hearing equity. I know I saw that on at least 2, if not all 3. So can we identify those? Equity. So I think I saw equity on all 3 of those. Okay, great. You got it checked off.
The unhoused community in Evanston at 0 or a very low number.
Yeah, I think it was the next one after that.
Yeah. All right. Equity considered in all city decisions. We got that. Have city staff and leadership reflect the city's demographics. Increase the tree canopy by a certain percent. City's carbon footprint at neutral by 2040.
Can I pause you there? Sure. Do we want to consider, and this is I'm just posing the questions for you all to decide, in terms of climate. I'm thinking of what's the broad category? We might be able to categorize those.
Yeah.
Do we want to say climate, environment, or not? Climate action and resilience. Okay. Yeah, for now, exactly.
Okay. Move away from car-centric city design. I think that would be CARP 2.
Okay.
Walkable city design. Yep. And then we have climate action and resilience. Economic development, job opportunities, planning, minority. That's economic. Yeah.
Right, there we go.
All right. I think so. It's a job. So yeah, I think that's okay. Then we're sustainable budget and with orderly process. Yeah. Gun safety. More community activities. Smooth and transparent legislative process.
Yeah, sure. Is that, that's the whole list? Okay, so before we move on, so you all caught up on those two? As far as what you checked off? Are there any thus far, because I'm seeing the grouping, can we take, what color did we not use? And we want to use this to circle, we want to group them by color?
Oh, mine are all orange.
Yeah, I was going to group them and then put them onto another sheet. So the ones who are sitting, we're going to put them to work as well. But if we can, so it doesn't get too sloppy, I'm thinking if we can circle them by color and to see how we can synthesize it onto a clean sheet. Does that make sense? By the color, so we want to differentiate the categories by color. Well, we can do that as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No. It's whatever works. Now you are the boss. I'm facilitating. You are the boss. Let's do the numbers. So let's number so number one, for example, we have affordable housing in general. So we'll say number one. If you have it checked off on the other sheet, you can just leave it checked off. So number one is great. Let me get you a white sheet. Yes. Okay. So we have equity.
1, 2, testing.
Oh, we're just working with this sheet first before we move on, categorizing them. So number three is what's? Oh, CARP. Yep, CARP. So 3 is CARP, economic development is 4, thank you. Equity is 2, and affordable housing is 1. Oh, thank you.
public service.
And again, right now the categories are broad, they're loose, which is okay for now. What do y'all think, public health for that?
So how I saw was community engagement, and that's the activity. So it was very different.
Community engagement. Okay.
So seven is health or
So-
community? Okay. Oh.
And again, it's just general for now, but that's good. What is that? That's
It's gonna fall on the list too, but I don't think it matches.
what category is that? I can't. What is that? Smooth and transparent. Can you call those off, please?
Number one, I have housing. Number two is equity. Three is CARP. Four is economic development. Five is finance. Six is public safety. Seven is community. Eight is health. And nine is process and procedure. And you can put kind of like
So go ahead, Daniel. Right. Exactly. So did we exhaust this list? Okay. So exactly. So now we're going to go here, and you've got some checked off already, I believe, or
Numbering, I'm
you got
starting to
'em-
number
okay.
them as I see them. I don't know where economic development is. Do you want me to read even the ones that were shared with that poster? Or?
Yeah, read them just so that we can all hear that. And
All right. Affordable housing, preserving, expanding, and maintaining the quality of affordable housing. Public safety, seek best practice and experiences through greater collaboration with other cities. Workforce development and local.
Is it?
No, I'll have to
Oh, you
work
don't
on
have
that
the
after I'm
number?
done.
So let's do so
I got affordable housing.
so,
Public
so label
safety
it
is-
as number one.
Yeah, I got that.
Oh, okay.
Public safety is 6.
You got yours.
All right.
Two
The
was
workforce
equity.
development part. Oh, y'all lumped economic development and workforce. Okay.
And I'm assuming your lists are synchronized with the one that's on the wall there. Okay.
Bolster and support Evanston's unique identity or identities, and then improve community engagement and participation. Do we have that number? That's 7.
7 community. Oh, it's 2 separate ones.
That's 2 separate ones, yeah.
Okay. So read that first
The
one.
first
again.
one was bolster and support Evanston's unique identity or identities. I don't think everything has to fit into.
Yeah, they don't have to because again,
I think
we'll
we
put,
need
we'll
stuff
put a
to
P
fall
for
out.
parking lot. The P for parking lot.
Where is it at? Expand entertainment and recreational opportunities.
Read that again.
Expand entertainment and recreation opportunities. Entertainment sounds somewhat economic development. Yeah. So what number is economic development? 1. No, I thought affordable housing was 1. 4.
4 is economic development. And again, it's not necessarily either or because there's overlap for sure.
Financial planning, budgets, time frame, schedule, measurable, rubric, number
5.
Developing action-oriented planning documents that we follow.
9, process and procedure.
Oh, okay. You said number 9?
9.
Increase staff residency to over 50%. Ensure that our city doesn't continue on a trajectory that continues to undermine the diversity of the city.
Is that 2 different ones or 1?
That's 2 different.
Oh, read the first one again.
The first one is increase staff residency to over 50%. And I think it's its own thing.
That sounds like a. Yeah, that sounds. Did we have more than 1 though?
Number 10 is staff. Well, I think we're trying to do goals now, and then we can get into objectives. I just want to make sure because some of this is like yeah,
it is
to moving towards the goal as opposed to the goal itself.
Yeah, that was my question. Is there more than 1? Because if not, let's don't create a category just for 1. But
So we're good moving forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Ensure that. Oh no, I did that already. STEM.
Next to that one, the parking lot.
STEM, the exodus of low and middle income residents. I kind of saw that as affordable housing, I guess.
The housing, would you all say? Number 1.
Recognize that our budget is a blueprint of our priorities as a city. Do a better job reflecting what residents want.
Finance, 5.
What do we got? Public safety reform.
Number 6.
Community engagement.
Number 7.
Health council. Staff collaboration. I think that's all one thing.
Yep.
That's different.
Healthy council staff collaboration.
Oh, healthy count. Okay.
Okay, so.
So which one is that?
So 9, process and procedure.
All right. Improve promotion and support of our lakefront music and arts. Improve promotion and support of our lakefront music and
Or community.
So what number?
What do you all think? Because that could be economic development or community.
I would say that's community.
Can she? She can hear us still.
Sounds like.
Oh.
That sounds like community. What? Everything can't be.
So then that's 7.
I think we talked about equity, employment, decisions by something, and then housing. But number 2. Pursue innovative municipal enterprises. What is that budget, you think?
No, I think that's finance.
Or finance, budget and finance.
Okay, wait, read it again.
Pursue innovative municipal enterprises. Number
5.
Significant city action pre-audited for council and economic justice. For social, okay.
This is like a weirdly phrased version of actually all city operations.
So what number is that?
2.
Okay.
2, equity. Okay.
Number 2. Child care for city employees and public servants.
2, equity. Would you all say? I mean, I didn't write it, so I don't want to speak for the person who wrote it.
Again, I think objective though. And then accessible and modern, and it looks like gout, which sounds very painful, but I don't think it says that. So, oh, government. Okay. Oh, that's abbreviation. All right. Gout. I'm just mixing around.
So we got all the ones on this list?
Accessible by government. That's not okay. All right, I think that's it.
Okay, so we got this list covered?
Yep.
Okay, so then. Okay. Oh.
All right. We have economic development, business retention and attraction. That's number 4. Workforce development, number 4. Define and set targets for expanding the supply of affordable housing. Yeah, that's number 1. Expand services, programs, resources to meet the mental health needs of Evanston residents. 8. Significant and measurable programs toward achieving our CARP goals. That's number 3. Progress, sorry. Senior housing near local amenities. Yeah. Equity in all city operations. 2, population growth. 7, that stands alone. It's parking lot, all right. I think that's community, but it's parking lot, I guess. I like population growth.
Well, okay.
Move households off of fossil fuels. That's CARP, which I'm sorry is 3. Northwestern strengthen the relationship.
That's a duality.
Maybe that's the parking lot.
Okay.
City infrastructure, that would be finance, or it could be a bunch of things, but
1, 2, testing.
yeah.
Okay. So 10 is infrastructure.
And I think we also want to note, the items that had a +1, because that would be the same as appearing multiple times on a, yeah. Okay.
1, 2, testing.
Okay. Increase resident participation. Community, or 7. Sure. 7 or 9, but 7 is fine. Improve land utilization.
Is that infrastructure? I don't know. What does it mean? Who wrote it? What are we talking about?
I wrote it, and it means, it's zoning, housing, economic development. I think it, using the stadium more than we currently do.
Okay, 4. So then it's number 4. Number 4.
4.
So are we saying economic development?
Yeah, I guess.
4.
1 and 4, yeah. And then harm reduction.
Right, which one?
It's all of those.
Right. They're all over now.
Yeah. I'm going to put it in whatever.
Parking lot.
Okay,
that's
and which
parking
one
lot.
is that?
Equity. I'm going to put it in equity.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I have a mic.
Okay, that's all of them?
Yes.
So before we take our break, the pluses, I see here workforce development has, I'm sorry? Oh, you said use the mic so they can hear you.
Did everyone use the pluses? I think some people didn't
There was
actively plus.
But it seems like most of them had at least a +1. because as we spoke about them, even if we didn't get to the board, we were like, yes. So it seems like everything had a kind of a plus one. Do we agree? Okay.
Each one on that list had a +1.
Yeah.
So by more than one person.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay, great. So, all right, excellent. Why don't we take a quick break? What do we need? Like 1 minute? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Call it.
Five
5
is
minutes. Okay, so I'll see you back. Okay, we'll give you 7.5 minutes. Be back at 11:35. We'll round out the number. Okay, if
We just gotta make sure everyone's talking on the mic.
right, okay.
Yes, all the time, as much as possible.
So how many? We have how many mics then? We have
3.
3.
plus
Okay.
this podium.
All right. So if we can reconvene here. Okay, so if we can come back together, you can grab your seats here. Okay. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
One or two things. Is that possible?
Okay.
And I think it would fall, it might be a new category, but I think management, looking at the city and management and how things are going. I'm getting texts from community members. And so I want to be transparent about that and say, some people are saying we're missing some of the marks. That's what I was thinking, but I wanted to speak to that. So if we put management, I'm okay with it being process and procedures, because I think that's what it is, the function of.
So management under number 9, process,
Yes.
for process and procedure.
Yes. Thank you.
I thought process and procedures was aimed at city council process and procedures, whereas this might be more of a staff. The whole city.
Okay.
So I think it could be a combination of both city council, but also making sure we're doing things in line, our processes and procedures for hiring, for doing everything are in line.
Okay, so then once Stephanie is done here, we'll make sure we have that notated.
Thank you.
But you had 2. That was 1.
I
Oh,
put
you
it all
combined
together, yes.
Okay.
I had more than 2, but those are the 2 that stood out.
Okay. So she is typing this in by these categories, nice and neat for us to make sense of it. Well, I think it's neater than what we're seeing here. But we don't want to get lost in the nuances of the language. Like let's just keep to the broad categories. That's the important part, so we can again move the process forward, because we'll easily get stuck right here at this point. So we have our 10 categories.
11, because we had parking, P. So it wasn't a number. Remember, we just had P
Oh, the
for
parking lot. Yeah, you're right.
Our parking lot.
I'm gonna put it down
of
here.
thoughts. But yes, people will, yes, especially in the second ward. We'll be talking about parking.
But I do want to second Chrissy's ask for one of our goals, maybe to be focusing on management, particularly our city manager and development. There, that's our only role. We can't really go too far deep in, but there have been a lot of, we've had the lakefront scandal recently. We've had the black employees who have submitted the letter. There've been things that have been going on long before that. And I think there is a desire in the community to see the council play a larger role in creating change internally.
Okay, so you're saying that to say what as far as our list?
That I don't think process and procedure captures that. Because I do, like Councilmember Revelle said, I see process and procedure as our own process and procedure amongst the council and not necessarily looking into management.
So what would we call that? Like policy?
I would call it city operations management.
Okay.
Not necessarily personnel management. That's not our power or role. But and that's why I phrase it as, really we only have one employee that we do have control over. That's the city manager. So
what's the category for that?
I would almost say it would be equity. I think a lot of the issues we've had have stemmed from not having an equity lens when we do things, which is why we received the report. And then also, the lakefront, again, like that was, harassment that wasn't taken seriously. And I think if we have that equity piece, I think that would, but I do agree, like adding, I guess the process, because some of the problems stem from not following a clear set of rules. So,
Or not having them in place.
yes.
So are we in agreement that just for now that falls under equity?
Sure.
Okay, and then let's make sure Stephanie has that.
I think I talked too much, surprisingly, there.
Right. What do we look? I just said management, and then Councilmember Reed kind of fleshed that out a little more than I did. Councilmember
Does
Reed.
that capture it, management? Or, because they are put internal as far as that one, process and procedure.
I like what I'm hearing from the group. I think folks are.
What's the capturing of it? How do we capture that?
Equitable process and procedure. So you have the 2 and the 9 that kind of coalesce.
I think what I'm hearing is that part of equity is ensuring that the way our employees are treated, the work environment, the way that concerns are addressed is reflective of our equity commitments.
Mm-hmm. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay. And so you got both of those, Steph? There were 2 that were mentioned. Okay.
Thank you for indulging me, you all.
Okay. So, any other comments before we move on? So then the idea is, in a sense, like minus, because we have a lot of detail here, and again, not all of it are goals, but we're not delving into that yet. The important thing are the categories, right? The important thing are the categories, and we want to be able to come to some level of consensus. Well, we just did actually on these 10 now categories that we have, right? So on those 10 categories, now it's important that we can, in a sentence, maybe 2, I mean, even 3 is a lot, but to define those. And again, it's not about, pass or fail. It's just about lending some definition to it so that we have a common description that we're operating from when we prioritize these. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to pose to the group, what do you all feel works best for you? We could do this in our breakout groups, or we could do this as a whole group in terms of coming up with definition. My concern about a whole group is the time that we might fall into going off task. I structured this as a small group activity, but I want to work with what works best for you all. Lending definition to those 10 categories. What works best for you?
I think there's a small enough group of us that are here in person. I don't think anybody is online right now, that we can,
Oh, there's not.
yeah, just, I think, do this as a group. Yeah, we can give it a try, yeah.
All right, we'll give it a try. So, okay, so just going back to the slide that we had up earlier, and I'm just going to reference it. You don't have to see it the whole time. So we did the, I'm sorry, back up. We did the brainstorming. We listed these out. We kind of grouped them to some degree. We categorized them. And with these, we want to, come to some agreement on 5 to 8. We can just work with these 10 if you like, or we can narrow it down, put 1 or 2 in the parking lot. But then the idea is then to get into the defining of these. There I have small groups. We can do it as a whole group, which is fine. The roles, we won't assume those because in the small groups, everyone had a role to keep everybody on task. But the idea is, again, in 1 to 3 sentences, we want to define these, not to perfection. Just got to keep stressing that, not to perfection. Because a lot of what we have on the Post-its, there's definition right here that we can just simply pull from. Okay? So let's do that as a group then. Yes.
I'd first like to maybe suggest, if there's consensus, that this looks like a fine list to me, and I don't know if we need to narrow it down any further. Maybe we do, but I think these are a good set of 10 goals that encompasses, I think, most of what we're trying to achieve.
Well, the idea was to lend the definition to them and then see if we need to narrow those down or not. Okay? So I know Stephanie is working on that document. We need another scribe and we can do it electronically or we can do it on the Post-its in terms of, and we'll just go in order as we have them up there in terms of housing. You can pull from what you see here to come up with 1 sentence, maybe 2, 3 at most, definition of what do we mean by housing. This is not the metrics, just the definition of what's meant by housing. Okay? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. So who? Like I saw housing in, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 places. Like I'll just pull from the examples we have up there. We can extract from that and just create a definition of what do we mean by housing in general. Okay. As we talk, as a goal, in general, what are we saying the goal is for housing? Okay. How do we define that? In general, just for now. And you can pull from here or you can pull from what comes to mind. And we'll just go right in chronological order. So, but we need someone to document it. And I'm going to put one of you out of task, or 2, or 3. I know you've been working hard, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, we have, guess what? We have just for you.
I know, but I don't have teachers. Okay.
We have more.
I can write on the lined paper. My handwriting goes up. Sticky. As long as I can use the blue pen.
And Bobby has Bobby.
I need 1 mic.
That was a Nas reference. All I need is 1 mic.
That was accidental. So, number 1, housing, in brief. Yeah, let's not nuance it to the last degree. What do we mean by housing? Once you see the type document, it's easier, but just for now, reference what we have up here. And if you speak, I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic so everyone else can hear.
I don't know if we have to start writing yet, but but I think my definition of housing would be safe, affordable, and we can define the different ranges of affordable, but safe, affordable, a safe, affordable place to live. That's, I think, as a, yeah.
I mean, to me, affordable housing means people who would like to live here can afford to live here. I mean, to me, it's like, I think affordable is definitely the key word. And I think, we can get into sort of for what category and what percent of this and that.
Yeah.
To me, it's if you want to live here, you can afford to live here.
So I'm hearing safe, affordable, and choice, but availability. And we can do fragments, that's fine.
The reason I use the word safe is we often, a lot of calls that I get aren't just about affordable housing. It's about, safe housing. There's mold,
Right.
or there's, some other condition. And so if we're saying the category is housing rather than just affordable housing, I think it should be a bit more encompassing of, because sometimes affordable housing is sometimes subpar housing because that's the model
True.
that some landlords use.
So we have safe, affordable, you said access, I'm sorry, available, and I missed the fourth one.
I think
Choice. I thought I heard
that's
by-
probably it.
I thought I heard choice. Okay. So is that, you can bullet it, that's fine. As long as it makes sense to you all at this point. Does that work for housing for now? Look how easy that was. Oh, yes.
Part of the purpose of this exercise, as I understand it, is, I know this is a very hard part, is to not be too broad so that we then have a tool that can guide us going forward. So I just want to name that as one sort of simple solution is to have either so many or such broad categories that everything falls into them. And then it turns out we've not done very much.
Right. And that's a good point. That's a good reminder, too, because, again, this is a draft that we're working with. This is draft mode that we're working with today. But you're absolutely right, Daniel. Safe, affordable, available.
I agree with the mayor. I think for this one, affordable, safe, quality actually needs to go hand in hand. I think about a case now that is going on in the community involving a landlord, a known kind of problem landlord. And because the housing hasn't been maintained properly, people haven't had access to it. We haven't approved some of the units to be occupied. They've been forced to leave because of the conditions of the units. So we actually have less available housing potentially if it's not maintained. And so I think in this sense, those two should go hand in hand.
So the quality of housing, yeah. Okay, can we add that up there? Yeah, that's it's okay. It's a little bit small, but it is projected. What's on the white paper is projected up there. Obviously, we can't project it all at one time, so you can reference either or. I think that's good for housing. What do you all feel for now?
I want to add, one thing, because I don't think it fits under any of the other categories, but, with housing, part of the issue is the city also getting out of the way, whether it be through our zoning code or certain other,
So I was just going to say, if we can parking lot that, and if we're good in general for some basic bullet points for housing here.
Sure.
Not that that's not valid, because if I heard where you were going, that's a valid point. But are we good for this portion of it? Okay, good. So we got housing equity. Again, that's another one. We can't get lost in the nuance and the detail. There's a lot there, but you can pull from what you're seeing here up on the screen or just from your own mind or memory. Number 2. I'm sorry, I had a question. I don't know who wrote this one. I see employment decisions by.
Big C and little C. So
Oh, by Big C and Little C. Got it. Housing. Okay, we touched on that. I think most of those there's those two there. What do we have? Equity considered in all city decisions. Have city staff and leadership reflect city demographics. I'm just trying to read what I'm seeing on equity. Equity in all city operations. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, then we can hone in on each one. Okay, so any key words or phrases that stand out to you all and what's there first? Does that work for everyone? Can everyone see that? Okay. So what words or phrases stand out with equity? That's there before we go beyond that.
I go back to.
Can you give her the mic, please?
I go back to, this was a goal in 2019, and the phrasing for that is equity in all city operations. So in the discussion that we had back then, it was both internally and then externally towards the public. So it was all city operations in all directions would have an equity lens.
Do you all feel that would suffice? You said equity in all city operations?
Yeah.
So that went back for me to that management piece that came with the equity of hiring, firing.
Right.
Everything that we do has to have that equity lens.
Right.
As well as equity in all of the services provided by the city to the community.
Does that encapsulate it for you all sufficiently for now?
Equity in all city operations.
Because, I mean, of course, before it's printed on the website, we're going to, detail the definitions, but I think that's pretty solid from what I'm seeing. Equity in all city operations, 360. Does that work?
I feel like we're not, I agree, equity in all city operations, but are we saying equity in all city operations or equality? And I just want to make sure that if we're saying equity, that it means that communities who have traditionally not received their fair share get an overabundance to make up for that. And,
right. I mean it in the sense of equity, the definition of equity.
Okay.
Which is not the same as equality.
No, that's obviously that's a critically important point.
Right.
So if we're clear on the equity aspect of that.
It seems like that's something we'll get into under objectives, because I have a lot of that for this, starting with a clear and agreed on definition. I think that's really important because we may not all agree on what that means. Equity in and of itself, I do see it like that, but I also see it as racial equity, social equity. I think equity actually could mean something else, financial, I think even. So I don't know. I just want to make sure that equity covers what we're talking about. Or is it social equity, racial equity? Is there something else we're missing, or is equity the thing? So
Can I put those maybe as sub-bullets, so we say social, racial, what does that mean? I don't know.
I just, again, if you were to Google equity, is what we're talking about, would that come up? Or is it actually social equity that will come up? That's all. I'm just trying to make sure that we're using the right word, phrase, or whatever.
What is it that you all mean by that?
I think we're talking in the broadest sense.
All encompassing? Okay. Okay, there we go. So that's the so that's.
No, I want to note that if we are doing an all-encompassing equity, again, does that not allow us to narrow down on actual priorities. I just want to throw that out there, you know. Or
Well, when we set objectives, won't we be targeting specific aspects of it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, my thought is equity is, as we have all encompassing, to me, that seems to suffice, because from there, actually to your point, because we're going to further detail the definition for one. For two, there's the objectives, and then there's the benchmarks. And I think that those are the indicators that we need to lend the detail to, like, what do we mean by equity, and what are we gauging, and how do we know if we're moving towards that once we get to the benchmarks and more of the specifics of that. But that's just my thought, because again, it's your decision. Does that work? Okay. CARP. And that as well was in the 2019-2020 as well. If we had dual screens, I'd pull up the other one so you can see those goals. There we go, CARP. What do you extract from that as a definition or bullet points?
It's not our staff goals. It's not staff goals. It should be CARP goals.
Oh, the second to last bullet point. Just say our, yeah. As far as the definition of the metrics on it. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. The second to last bullet point, significant and measurable progress in achieving our CARP goals. So that works for now. I keep saying for now. You're all on your best behavior today. We're already on the third one here. What's going on? We're gonna be out here by 4 o'clock. What do you know? We saved a whole hour.
Let's call it 4:30 to be safe.
And then we have economic development, number 4. So, yeah, we have economic development. She's going to scroll down there. There we have it. Key phrases, terms. What stands out from that as points of definition? And obviously, again, there's the intersectionality with this, with many other things, but we don't want to get lost on that.
to me, what sticks out as what I hope a goal would be resilience, which I think means creating an environment for that attracts economic development naturally.
Other thoughts?
Well, I think it's so broad, but I think what the goal would be to, especially now, since the pandemic is still happening, that economic development is revitalizing our business communities, maintaining the job base that we have, and attracting new businesses that bring job growth and economic development growth.
I agree. I think facilitating business growth as well as personal economic growth for residents.
So I'm here. I heard revitalizing. I heard that's stimulating. You facilitating growth. You said individually for individuals and for the businesses.
And I think a critical part, enhancing. I think a critical part,
Placemaking?
enhancing or promoting is what Eleanor said, economic development. And I think a critical part of this is workforce development, which we have been discussing for a long time, but I think now we are putting resources behind it in a way that we haven't before. So
It's not.
So what do we synthesize from that?
I mean, what I'm hearing is businesses, jobs, workforce development, and the other thing that I saw on the sheets that I think we haven't mentioned so much is like, I don't know, activities. Well, remember we had this whole back and forth about, I forget which one it was, but, do kind of public entertainment options count as community or economic development? Ultimately, I think it got put in this category.
I think a strong definition that I'd like to work from with economic development is the city specifically focusing on placemaking. I think the thing that only we can do, only we can design our streets and the environment to be a place that is inviting to people. Whereas I think we focus a lot on giving money out to businesses. So I wonder if, I think what Daniel was just describing there is an example of placemaking. So I would love to see that somehow worked into the definition that we create.
So again, I'm hearing revitalizing. I heard stimulating, placemaking, individuals, businesses, attracting. Is that enough to work with? Okay. So we have revitalizing, stimulating, attracting. Yeah, I'm talking about economic development, right, for individuals. And, I'm sorry, I missed
Placemaking.
Placemaking. Individuals and businesses. Okay, does that work for now?
I will say that I think that individuals and businesses is more related to the stimulating and retaining. Is that the first one?
Revitalizing.
Revitalizing, okay.
Post-COVID or related to COVID. Okay.
Real quick, I think we heard economic growth. I'd like to put that up. I'm just doing a little bit of. I just think putting economic growth up there is important. And
growth and development, economic growth and development.
And just a note that I see community development is the economic development, community development aren't the same. Community development is a process for making a community a better place to live and work. Economic development is purely and simply the creation of wealth in which community benefits are created. So I think at some point it's important for us to understand what these terms mean because they do have meaning. And so I like this though, like being able to measure that, especially like creating wealth, creating economic growth. We can measure what the position of our economy currently, and then making sure we know exactly how we want to grow it so we can measure it. So hopefully that's captured in this.
Okay, we're good for now? Okay, number 5, finance. And again, you can refer to the screen.
So we the new kid on the block, I became, and we had this pot of ARPA money, and near the end, we were near.
The mic, give me the mic, please.
Hello? There we go. So I just really would like for us to look at creating, I come from an educational point of view, so a rubric where we decide this is how the money is spent so that there are no, well, you like that store better than this store, it's in your ward, that there's a systemic way or a system in which we say, this is how we give money. I'd also like for us to think about how we distribute that money so that it doesn't disappear in the beginning and then some great ideas come later. So is that a quarterly system that we decide this is what our budget looks like, and each quarter we're going to give out this much, and we have emergency here just in case it comes? Those are just my thoughts. I don't know what that means.
But but you highlighted many important points. One, this is sustainability of that woven into the finance.
I personally think about this as like responsible stewardship of the community's finances.
Because responsible includes both sustainable and prudent, and there was one other, and orderly. Responsible. It's a good word.
I really, really, really want to echo something Christy said. I think this item in particular has got to include some process revision as well as just substantive goals. You know, both from the standpoint of information sharing and forecasting and goal setting and naming, all that stuff. Like, I think 100% utilization of data. So in any case, I think, you know, process has got to be a significant part of the way we think about this one.
Yeah. So we have
Sustainability, I'm sorry, stewardship, and orderly, and then process, and then I just put subtitles, data, forecasting, all the things in there. So,
Yeah. I also would like to, I put the one pursue innovative municipal enterprise up there. And the reason for that is I think one of the things I'd like to see us do with this, the finance goal is we need more revenue. We need more revenue. We need to generate revenue. That's we have huge unfunded liabilities. I talk about it from the infrastructure to our pensions that we're making progress on, to just not being able to meet our other goals like affordable housing. And there's plenty of work that we want to do that we just don't have the financing for. And I think we have to figure out a way to generate revenue for the city without raising property taxes and without having to unnecessarily rely on taxes, fees, and fines. And, increasing water users, finding, there's some cities that are doing things like providing internet service or electricity or these other things that are innovative ways for the city to make money. Parking is an enterprise, and I think we're leaving money on the table there. And so I think we really need to dig into some of those enterprises that the city could start up that will generate revenue in a non-regressive way because it's a service that residents are already paying for that they could pay to the city instead at a cheaper cost.
So you're saying the innovative enterprise you're speaking to?
Yeah, really just innovative revenue generation really is what I'm overall.
Innovative revenue generation, does that work for everyone? Because that makes perfect sense. Okay.
This is certainly reflected in what Devon said, but I want to make sure it's also reflected in what's written. I think fairness needs to be a part of it, right? So when you talk about not moving away from fines and fees, that's because we really don't like the consequences of who that falls on. And so it's not just innovative revenue generation, it's innovative and fair or just or equitable revenue generation. I don't care which of those words you use, but it's got to be in there, I think.
Yeah. That's a great point. Okay. Then, yep, number 6, public safety. I thought there was more under. Yeah, delegate, that's okay. Here's the public safety reform.
Oh, yeah, it's that bad.
Oh, you have them out?
Take them off for the team. So we're at 6, which is public safety? Okay.
So we have public safety, and over here is public safety reform, just for whatever that's worth to anyone. No, not necessarily. I'm just letting you all know that. Why don't we go through number 6 and then lunch is here? So if we go through 6 and do you all want to have a working? I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time left. You want to eat and have a working lunch? You want to pause? All right. I didn't want to mandate it. I agree. Trying to stay in my lane. I agree. Okay. So how about we go through public safety real quick? I mean, public safety reform, I don't know if that encompasses that or not, depending on what the person meant by it. We have more.
I mean, I got handed a mic against my will. I think everyone has the right to be safe and feel safe, and that we need to provide for public safety in a way that's sensitive to the racial inequities that have often come along for the ride with this issue. And please don't write that down. That was a train wreck. It was an utter disaster. Real rough draft.
So what's an encapsulating phrase or a couple of bullet points for public safety? What does that cover? Which I don't believe so. If that's what you all meant.
I think I want to, and this is kind of lofty and high, but I want to say justice, and the reason I say that is because I think, Dr. Logan, you've done a lot of this. I think the restorative justice circles, and so, I think about it as what makes the victim feel whole, and sometimes that does not mean placing someone into the carceral system. I don't know. So,
yeah, when you say that, the phrase that comes to mind, not that that's what you mean by this here, but is restorative accountability. The restorative accountability is when you said that, that's what came to mind.
yeah, I think that's a good definition.
Does that work for you all? Restorative accountability in terms of, you're repairing the harm that was done, but it's the restoration of both the perpetrator and the victim. and the community and the family in which they come from, and trying to address the conditions upon which created this, whatever the issues are.
I will say that I think one thing that I'm seeing this council and our police department move toward is, and I don't know if there's just a word for this, but we are moving toward creating local alternatives to arrest. And so I don't know if that's somehow we can wrap that up in public safety, but we are trying to move more arrestable offenses and even felony charges to local municipal ordinance violations.
I'm sorry to grab the mic again. I think I agree with everything that's been said, but I just want to make sure that we also center the fact that a lot of people live in this town and feel safe. A lot of people live in this town and don't feel safe, and that's not okay. That's at a high level. That's what we've got to do something about. That there's plenty of people who go to ETHS and feel the need to bring a gun to protect themselves on the way there or on the way home. There's plenty of people who don't feel that way, and that's a fundamental difference in how you feel all day, every day, and it changes your whole life, and we got to fix that.
Sure. Yeah.
No, for both. I don't know how to.
Maybe the goal is to have a community where all residents feel safe.
And it does encompass those points and what was just mentioned, my opinion. Does that suffice?
I think that broad kind of statement is good. All residents feel, all community members feel safe.
That work? Okay. Or you just trying to get to lunch? Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay. So we have that. Okay, good. So I think, given the time we have, so we'll pause. We'll get our lunch when you all. Is it in the room there? Okay. So if you want to grab that, come back. We'll continue so we can get out by 4:30 at this point. But I think we're making good progress here. Again, this is an incomplete process, right? So what I'm thinking at this point is we get through this list with the definitions, excuse me, and talk about, based on these definitions, if we could prioritize those, I think that's a good point right there, because the metrics are obviously important, but to further hone in on the definitions might be work that should happen prior to that. I mean, that's my thought, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud on that one. So I think if we get through this list and then prioritize it based on what we have thus far, I think that might be some progress made, but I'll let you all decide that.
Yeah, I think because part of, I say this oftentimes when we do this thing, is that this type of session, you do this maybe 2 other times.
Yeah.
And so again, another thing I see is we tend to feel like we could fit all this into one meeting, and that's just not going to happen. And I've never been a part of an organization where something like this is done in one session. So just being successfully. So just being patient and just, trust the process, know ahead of time we're going to do this 1 or 2 more times, and that's fine. Because I think that I'm hesitating a lot, because I do think how focused the goal is important, because then it focuses in our objectives even more. Or we can start really broad and then the objectives has less and less power, or we can really focus in and hone in on the goal, and then it makes the objectives that much more powerful and directional. So that's why I'm hesitating, because I could always safety for everybody. That's one way to put it. But there's also, I think, a more focused goal for public safety that I would want to see that then makes those objectives much more powerful and intentional and measurable. So, so it's going to take some time.
So now you all feel my plight. Because Daniel and Luke said they wanted this on the website by 6 o'clock this evening. So, no, just kidding. Get that off the record. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you're right, because it's tough. And that's why, again, we want to adhere to the process and the integrity of the process. And I think, like I said, I think if we get through this with some loose definitions, kind of based on those loose definitions, we prioritize that, as a draft mode. And then that's something, hopefully that's some substance for you to really delve into further, like more concrete and specific definitions to those terms and consensus on that prior to doing the metrics, objectives, or anything else. That's what I'm thinking. Process.
When we come back and say, this is really where I feel we need to go to get to that consensus.
Yeah.
But for me, when I try to just do it right here, it's more just an exercise than really feeling it and understanding it for our constituents.
Right. Okay, so there's consensus on that, and the consensus that lunch is ready, and the consensus you all will grab it and come back, and we'll continue. That's the consensus, right? All right, see you in a few minutes. Soon. Okay, you all are done eating? Great. Everybody's finished? No, keep eating. But I would like to continue. Are we all good? Okay. I have a hard stop. Not that you all can keep going. Do it how you all do it. Keep going. But I'm just, what I meant to tell you in advance, I told Daniel and, excuse me, look, I have a hard stop at 1:15, but I might be able to push that back. I coach in FAM, and I'm the head coach and the junior high kids, and we need an adult there, if you know what I mean. So, but I'm seeing if we can adjust that or not. But we have 4 more as far as like the first draft of some fodder for a definition. So, did you volunteer to? Then we can, that takes care of that. Can I move this over here? Then they can all see it while they're eating, and then we can continue on community. Okay, so yeah, keep eating away. And while you all are, you probably can't see the screen, huh? Oh, you can? Okay. So that's what we have under community. If I need to read it out, let me know. I could do that as well. But again, just continuing along with some phraseology, some bullet points, some language that we can extract for community based on what we have up there. That's another very broad, general category, obviously.
So I think we hear time and time again, especially at City Council, to have more engagement. I think we do a good job of promoting meetings and the such, but I think we could do better. So just improve, and anything we can do better, right? We do it and we can always grow. So engagement and participation. Well, the participation isn't on us, but the engaging our community members, I think, is important.
Okay. Yep, sure is. So engagement.
To me, a part of that is really making sure we're meeting people where they are. I think language access is a really big part of that. But also, making sure that we don't define engagement as y'all can come to city council and do public comment, but meeting people where they actually are.
But are we talking about engagement in the context of our city council process and procedures? Because I'm trying to get us away from having 10 different goals. So I guess I wonder whether that aspect of community engagement isn't something that we should talk about in terms of our council process.
If I could add, my understanding was under point 9, process and procedures, we have in parentheses internal. I didn't know if you all were trying to differentiate that or not at that point. And again, once we have this 10, we're going to prioritize, so we're not going to delve into all 10, but for now, what are your thoughts on that? As far as community.
I mean, I think as long as we're committed to really prioritizing in a serious way and not just landing on 10 things, then yeah, I do agree they're different. This is external facing and process and procedures is internal facing. But what do y'all want me to write down here?
So, yeah, so how do we capture that then for community? As far as like the external facing aspect of it, like Daniel said.
I'm not sure. I'd like to really think about that some more, but I think what I believe I get is we hear from those who have the most concerns, I'll say. And there's so many more people to hear, but I think they're nervous to speak. They have not been allowed, and it's no one's fault, to have we make mistakes. That one of the bullet points that you mentioned earlier, that this is a draft, so that they can speak to us in draft mode and say, here's my concern. I may state it wrong, but this is the essence of my concern. So we hear from the same people, which I appreciate, but I know there are other voices out there. And how do we pull them in? How do we engage them? That's really the essence of what I'm trying to get at, is that we get greater participation and engagement from the wider community. I don't know what that looks like.
I'll also add that I think this category really focuses on creating opportunities for folks to not just engage with government and come to our meetings, but also to engage with each other in community. And so somehow I think that also needs to be wrapped up in the definition.
I mean, at least part of what I'm hearing is, I mean, on one hand, cultivating a sense of community among community members. I'm also hearing the community engage, almost like equitable community engagement. Like you said, I mean, you didn't put it this way, but just, those few who kind of are at the mic more, who have the loudest voice kind of get heard, but is that necessarily representing the voice of the community? And then I'm looking at the bolster and support community identities in terms of, because, we are an Evanston community, but there's the diversity that's here, and that's part of the richness that's here, all the ways that we bring out the value of the diversity we have. And I'm just looking at whoever put that up there in terms of like the various identities. I think that's another important component there. Like cultivating that, allowing opportunities for people to express that.
I think something you said really spoke to me in that just kind of defining, similar to equity, defining and building and working towards community. Like, what does that mean to really be in community together? I think that is a good overarching goal if we can figure out how to name that. Because it's one thing to say community, but it's like, what is that? How do we do that in an authentic way? that ultimately leads to some of the things that we heard, more community input, more improving community satisfaction, all of that. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's a powerful point, because breaking it down like that, like whatever the objectives are and the benchmarks makes it practical and tangible, as opposed to this abstract notion of, community. Like what does that mean? But I think that definition is in the objectives and the metrics, but is there anything else for the definition at this point? For now, for community?
Well, it seems like we're talking about two things, and I'm not sure how to say either one. One is, equitable opportunities for public engagement, engagement with us, and the other is this exploration of a kind of a commons, right? A shared venue for community interaction and self-definition and so forth. And I have no idea how to write that second one. I think it's more than just access. It's having a public space that everybody participates in and contributes to. That's not about government, but it's about just life out there in the world, reflecting the full complement of who's here.
So, taking a cue from Bobby, I looked up the definition of community, and it says a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Maybe cultivating common goals to build community. I don't know. I don't know how you would specifically say that, but I think part of it's the growing the feeling of community in town would be one point, and then I think that increased participation in that.
City, like cultivating community ownership of city activities or city engagement or something like that.
Yeah. Yes, I'll say yes. I think, as an example, this summer the Parks and Rec Department under Director Thompson, sponsored block parties and brought activities out to the community. And so I think, we had one in the 8th Ward and folks absolutely loved it. And so I think, and I'm sure it happened all over the city. And so I think that's an example of the city stepping in, and the Parks and Rec Department was able to do that because of funding that the City Council provided specifically for violence reduction. And that was building a sense of community. So I like the working definition that Juan, Stephanie, Bobby, everybody are kind of putting together here.
I also like the building the sense of community too, what you just said.
Say that again?
Building a sense of community. I think there's...
Yeah, I keep hearing that aspect, like the cultivating, like creating spaces and creating spaces for this word identity keeps coming back to me. But you're creating spaces for these identities to be expressed, to be shared, to be learned from, to be, like the value of the diversity. I keep coming back to that. And somehow, I'm sorry? For shared experiences and creating space for that and cultivating that in the community.
And I think when you're, and I'm just thinking to like events in general where people can feel seen and heard and also have the opportunity to connect. I think that's, this one's turning out to be really hard to summarize in like 2 words, but like, or no, a couple words, but like, I feel like if you have like these events where you can meet your neighbors and, you know, come together, you know, with your shared, you know, experiences and like learn, you know, about folks' differences, and like that also gives people, I think, the confidence to come to a, you know, a city event and like speak up about something. And I mean, it's
So yes, there you go.
So I'm thinking of 2 bullets. One is equitable public engagement, and the other is creating space for shared experience and connection.
That sounds, yeah.
You look worried. Am I
No,
right?
no, I was seeing it as you were saying it. No, I think that's good. Uh-oh.
We say like community driven, add like driven by the community, because there's moments when people in the community have like great ideas, but there's no process for them to actually do their fest. Like the Asian American, the Umbrella Festival downtown, that was probably one of the most amazing events I've attended. And it was community driven. The Latinx Heritage Month event in the 8th Ward, that was community driven.
That's important, like the community centered or community driven spaces. Yeah. I mean, creating those or providing the context for that community driven space. Because one thing for you all to provide it for them, it's another thing for the community to have a voice in that and to be able to identify what they want and need for themselves and for our city. Yeah, creating the space and making it accessible. So far we have equitable public engagement, community-driven opportunities to create space for sharing and connection. Does that suffice for now? All right. Number 8, health. Or public health specifically. I mean, that might capture it right there. I don't know.
Yeah, this is where I wanted to have us talk about meeting the mental health needs of our community.
So let me ask you, if we said, expanding services, programs, resources to meet the health needs of Evanston residents, and then, like, for example, mental health, B and C, would that, because I don't want to negate the point you're making.
Right. Well, I mean, there's just been a lot of attention in the last, since during the pandemic in particular, but before that, about programs and services that especially meet the mental health needs. Right. We've seen increasing mental health needs in the community, and so I was really singling that out.
The mental health.
Mental health, right.
As the definition for public health? Or
oh, no, just as one major component of that.
And I'm wondering, if we took that definition and had, again, expanding services, programs, resources to meet the health needs of Evanston residents, including, mental health. I don't know if you all had a second and a third one.
I would think about, about generally public health. I mean, we have a plastic bag ban that's about, has a public health component. There's a sugar tax discussion that's going to be coming up, public health component. So I think the full spectrum.
Okay.
What did we say for CARP for 3? Could we scroll quickly back up to that? And there's a reason.
Significant and measurable progress in achieving CARP goals.
Yeah, so I think the same is true for health because we have an E-plan that I really want us to stay closely to. Like that should be, to me, that's my guiding star, and I'm working on interventions that are aligned with our E-plan. So I think we should have a similar phrase for public health. There's a lot we can work on, but I think we need to really focus on our E-plan. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay?
I don't know if our E-plan tells us things we need to do. I think it more so, from my recollection, highlights data and inequities, but I don't think it says what to do as a result of that.
It comes up with a list of priorities. So last E-plan, obesity, for example, addressing obesity was a priority. So it does come up with a list of priorities that may not include even some of the things that we might list off. So that's what I'm saying. We need to really focus on those priorities that were outlined in the E-plan.
Okay.
And then we can come up with interventions as objectives.
Okay. That works for everyone for now. All right. Number 9, we have, process and procedure. That's a big one, but it's so big, I think a general description at this point might suffice. I'm trying to get out of your way. Smooth.
So for me, this is kind of where I was starting with the finances, that we have to have process and procedures in which how we do things so that it's people understand. And I think that first, transparent, when people understand this is how you ask for money, this is a process in which we'll decide, then it's equitable, then it's fair, and it's transparent. So that's just a generic example, but I think we need transparent processes that make sense to us and them.
I would say, I don't know what the definition should be, but just some thoughts of just coming up with processes and procedures that allow for kind of more productive debate, more efficient meetings, and helping us just reach consensus, to identify kind of consensus, and to kind of move towards common goals, which to me, even this exercise today is kind of falls in this bucket of kind of coming up with different processes and procedures. But those are just some thoughts. And this is about us, right? Process and procedures for council, right?
Internal, yeah. The parentheses is internal.
Transparent, equitable, and efficient. Are there additional?
I think there's no argument there on those points, at least.
I think we also want to. No, those points are fine. There's no argument there. But I do think we want to create processes internally that I think we're all here for a reason, and I think we want to create processes that value everyone's contributions. It doesn't mean that we act on all of them or that we agree with all of them, but that don't dismiss folks out something.
What would you want right now? Inclusive?
Inclusive, yeah.
That works? Okay. For now, right? Okay. And number 10, infrastructure. There's no definition on the screen. What were the thoughts on infrastructure? Yeah, let's get that on mic. Seemed like that one came up later. I don't recall. This.
I think stewardship of city-owned properties.
Right, and maintain, improve, or dispose of city infrastructure. With a long-term plan, or develop a long-term plan for maintaining, improving. Yes. Yeah. Develop a long-term plan and funding mechanism to maintain, improve, or dispose of city infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to keep my opinion out of it. I thought that was great, though. But let's see what it looks like. I'll just read it so everyone can hear it. So develop a long-term funded plan to maintain, improve, and or divest of city infrastructure.
You put divest? Okay, good. Yeah, I was concerned about dispose. I know it was just a draft, but I was like, okay, yeah.
So my
Exactly.
So my question, would the long-term or the maintain be part of, we heard a couple of times at council that we didn't have a log of when something had been looked at. So I don't know if that's the maintain or, but we should be paying attention to that so that we can decide the shelf life of this is 12 years and we're at year 20. We should be ready to part ways with. So that's maintain. Okay, thank you.
So that works for everyone for now? Okay. I feel like I need to give you all a round of applause. I mean, that's, that is, I'm sorry? That's all 10. And 10 is a lot. I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Just to read, we have the parking lot of thoughts. So let's just, can you just read those off real quick, just so that we can all hear that? Oh, is that on there as well? Oh, there we go.
How about
I'm sorry, which one?
the one Daniel's working on?
Number 9, process and procedure.
No, I'm sorry.
10, infrastructure.
So something was brought to my attention. How about our organizational structure as well? Not just property, but are we looking at the organization and do we have positions that make sense and things like that? So that makes sense to me as well. I don't know if that's touchy, but
I think we can look.
I personally don't see that as I mean, I get why you could call it infrastructure, but I don't see it as productively going in this bucket. I think it's two quite different things.
okay, so then what bucket do we want to put it in?
And that's why Devon said parking lot.
I don't know that it's parking. I think we need to pay attention to something like that because I just think we do. So,
Should we create 2 departments?
so right now, there was a position of equity, right? But that became because of how things were. Are there positions that are now obsolete that we just really haven't paid attention to? And now we're coming into a new phase of, so I don't know if that's departmental or
So
what.
I guess I would respectfully echo what Devon said earlier. This is city council goals. We oversee Luke,
Right.
and then Luke has all the authority over everything else. I think our job, as described on these 10 things, is to set very, very clear objectives to Luke, and then hold him accountable to set up an organizational structure that achieves those objectives, rather than we're the ones designing the org chart ourselves.
Especially at the staff level, I will say I think we have the power to create new departments. I would park that. I don't think that necessarily needs to be a goal of ours, but I just wanted to call that out. I think we do have that power. And then anything else, because I held off on a lot of things too. I think some of this can go into like our goals for the city manager, which is different from our council goals. And so I intentionally left much of that off. Like if you were to look at my goals and priorities list for council versus what we've been discussing with the city manager review process, there are a lot of differences. So that might actually be able to go in there as well in our goals for the city manager.
You say for the parking lot or for as a separate?
I'm just saying what Councilmember Harris just brought up, we might be able to get that into our goals for the city manager, which is a separate process that we've been having separate from this. That was more so for Council Harris. Yeah.
Okay.
You could also put this under finance as well. I mean, it's, looking at staffing could be, part of what, Luke is, looking at for that end of the financial picture. So.
Okay.
I'd also add that it could be equity as well. I mean, I think it really it's fully encompassing. I think it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because in essence, equity should be woven into every fabric, really. Were you going to say something, Dan? No, okay. So, and everyone saw the parking lot items. Anything you want to add to that or that we missed? You feel we missed?
I would just say a harm reduction. I don't think, I think that's an equity issue. We can pop it off the parking lot.
Oh, the harm reduction?
Yeah. The equity issue? Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Was part of the.
Any other thoughts on terms?
Hopefully, we incorporated Councilmember Newsom's ideas. I forgot about that because he did send a whole list of. So we'll want to check the list following this meeting just to make sure we probably have, right? Okay. All right.
Because I kept looking at his too.
Okay. Good.
Oh. So, okay, so are we good in terms of the parking lot items? Okay. So, how do you feel about where you reached thus far with what we have?
I think your instructions are for us to feel good about wherever we end up. So that's how I feel.
My instructions. But do you all feel that you have something to work with?
Absolutely.
I mean, something more than what you had before?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And so we have these 10 categories for goals, right? Now, mind you, those are not the goals themselves. We just have some terminology, some phraseology, some fodder for defining those terms. And as we talked about, the importance of having concrete, specific definitions, short, succinct, I should say, definitions upon which you can then develop your benchmarks, right? As we talked about, we won't get it all in today. However, with these 10 that we have, I want to pose the question to you all because there are council members who are not here whose voices are important. I'm not sure the plan for incorporating those because it would be ideal that their voices were heard here. I wouldn't want to take this too far without those voices being heard. That's my one reservation about how far we go today. Yes, go ahead.
I think that, Councilmember Newsom, for example, seemingly took a lot of time to really send a detailed scope of his thoughts. And Councilmember Kelly isn't here. And I think, for the most part, the folks... I'll stop there.
Okay, I can't paraphrase that one, but if you all are understanding of what's being said, so my question is, with what we have thus far as definitions, right? We talked about the importance of really defining those. Would you want to prioritize these based on what you do have, or would you want to delve into the actual defining of those terms in more specific? Because we were going to break out into some of that work, because that as a whole group, that's too much, in my opinion, to do the defining of the terms, each one through the process in which we just engaged in. But again, it's a question of what works best for you all. And I'm just reminding you that I have a hard stop, so I'm going to leave you all with it. I'm going to leave it at the right point.
I would just say that I think we've defined it enough to prioritize it if we don't want 10 goals. Because I think doing the work to continue to define 10 goals is a lot. And if we're going to do it, then we should understand we want to come out of this with 10 goals, which I don't think we do. And so I would say, yeah, I think we have enough to prioritize maybe our top 5 at the most, and maybe even less than that. But
I suggested 4 to 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Something within that range. I mean, I think 3 is a bit too few.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything more than 6 is, I think, too much. 5 is a good number, but I suggested 4 to 6.
Okay.
So as far as the process that was laid out, we were taking these definitions as we have it thus far, and we were going to prioritize those to see which ones we're kind of sifting out. Again, not that they're not important, but they're being put in the parking lot because you can't do it all now, right? So we want to do what's attainable and what's realistic. So that was the next step in this process, was to take these definitions and use that to then prioritize these 10, to draw that line between the top 5 or top 6 or 4 or whatever that is that's important to you all.
And are these our goals for 2023, 2024, for the rest of the term?
I was thinking the same thing. I would hope this is annual goals. It's typically what you've done, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that makes sense, so we can check back in each year and see where we're at. Yeah.
I think if we're going to narrow this down, I'd advocate for narrowing it down to 6 goals. And I think we can do that as a group, and I think we might be able to be honest with ourselves, in this moment, and start narrowing down some of the items.
We have about 15 minutes or so.
All right. You have a hard stop?
Yeah, I have a hard stop in a few minutes. And we have acknowledged that we're missing 2 people. So I just want us to be cognizant of that.
I mean, I just want to strongly echo Bobby's view on just, I can't speak to what's today and what's later, but I think to me the next steps are what Bobby said. Narrow it down. I think 5 is a great number. If we absolutely can't, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But narrow it down, which, is not a 3-minute process, but it's not going to be a 3-hour process either. And then with that much shorter list, really go into detail in terms of fleshing out, establishing metrics, and so forth.
Can maybe we use our last 10 to 15 minutes to maybe talk about collectively where we would narrow down? I particularly, I just want to challenge this group in one area where I personally would put CARP in my top 5, and I think folks in the room would all say that CARP is in our top 5. But I've heard people not, or I feel like I've observed that we haven't actually acted in that manner as if CARP is in our top 5, particularly if we're looking at it at a year-by-year basis. I mean, I've heard discussions that would challenge that, and so I just want us to think critically about if we're going to narrow it down to 5, are we really prepared to take real action on those 5 items this year?
And if I could suggest, what I would suggest is with these 10, you start with, okay, are there obvious ones that, okay, even if it's not number 1, these 2 or 3 are obvious in the top 5. And are there 1 or 2 or a few that are, okay, you know what, these are important, but they're surely not in the top 5. Like if you all can have any consensus on that, that helps to narrow it down as well. Then you can have, I think, a bit more discussion on the remaining points. That's my thought. And again, I'm going to have to leave you with it, but I wanted to put that out there and to hear what you thought on that, or how you're going to proceed forward.
I would concur. If you sounds like you're at your stop, I would say we say thank you very much. And as you leave, we try to see how much progress in that vein we can make in the next few minutes before I think some folks here also have hard stops at 1:30, and then we'll see where we are and reconvene to figure out what the next step will be.
Okay, that works for you all? Okay. Well, thank you all.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much.
I mean,
Thank you.
you made, I know it's some, things are tough, but you all, in my opinion, you made a lot of progress. There's a lot here that you covered. And again, I just hope that you have something of substance to be able to move forward more in a better way than what you had to work with in the past. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity. Because I see this as an opportunity for me to serve, our city as well. And thank you all for what you all do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Logan.
And here's another free mic.
I'm going to kick this part off just to get it rolling. I would say some of this stuff is like going to happen in the background no matter what. So I don't see this as like, what are we not going to focus on next year, but more so like, what do we need like extra special attention on that may not be getting enough attention now, and therefore we need to kind of call it out. For instance, like finance, I don't think that needs to be in the top 5 or 6. We have a finance and budget committee. People can bring ideas there, but at least we have something that can help us move towards, I think, many of our finance related goals. So for that reason, I would say housing, equity, CARP. So housing, definitely housing, equity, CARP, health, community, and then if it's a 6th in economic development, yeah.
I just want to respectfully challenge that framing. I think this should be our top priorities. And even if we have things in place, I think I envision us using this to say, here's 2 ways we can allocate time. And each one is going to be a lot of work. What have we decided in advance is the most important thing? And even though we have a finance and budget committee, if we believe that our finances are a top priority, I think we need to say that now.
I'm sorry, can I just chime in real quick? This is where that consensus building really comes into play. Because the further we go, the more it's critical. So I just wanted to put that as a reminder. And also those community agreements. I just want to put that out as a reminder because this is when they become critical as well. Thank you.
Time and money, though. And so that's what I'm saying. Like time, I think Finance and Budget Committee is already putting in the time. But I want to make sure like our top 5, 6, like we're going to put money into it. Disproportionately put money into it. Top 5 is housing, or 6 or 5. Whatever. What are we saying? Top 5?
Let's let everybody say, I would have say fewer than 5, frankly, but let's give everyone 5 votes if we want to do it that way.
Housing, equity, CARP, health, community.
7 and 8, it looks like.
And economic development. Before a 6th, yeah. Then I would take. I don't know. I'll come back to that.
And I do think we should maybe consider following Dr. Logan's advice of trying to see if we can, by consensus, take a couple off, put a couple on. That might simplify this process.
I think if we just all vote, that might kind of create some consensus. See what the overlap is.
Eleanor, go ahead.
Well, I was going to comment on Bobby's comment about we didn't need to put finance on there because we have the Finance and Budget Committee. Because if I'm not saying I'm voting for finance yet, but if I were, it would be to say not only do I want the Finance and Budget Committee to spend a lot of time doing what they need to do, but that we as a council would have multiple opportunities during the year to have presentations and discussion ourselves. So it's more than just a commitment on the part of the Finance and Budget Committee.
Do you want to give your top 5?
Well, I would go housing equity.
Say the number.
Oh, 1, 2, 3. Yikes. 8. And I'll go with 5.
I'll just say I'm concerned that we don't have some members of the council here while we're possibly knocking things off the list. I mean, I'm prepared to give 5, but I'm wondering, we should make sure that the other members of the council get to participate before we decide that something comes off.
Yeah, that's why I want to, for a third time, suggest we follow Gila's proposal. If there's some consensus here, if we can talk through, hey, we all agree these two should be on, we all agree these two should be off. I think that's a decision I think that we can, with this many people here, make. But if it's about tallying votes and the cutoff is 6 votes and not 5, then I think it becomes much more uncomfortable to do that without everybody here.
Right. So, and that's my concern also.
But I think with the tallying, we're not going to take off. We can let our counterparts who aren't here, and I'm about to leave, see where we land and not make a decision.
Yeah.
I am uncomfortable with us giving rationale now with our counterparts not here because they can't counter that. So I just wanted kind of the straw poll. This is where we are. Nobody puts an opinion in to why or why not, because we don't have those other 3 voices here. That's my opinion. So I can give you mine. 1, 2, 7, 8, 9. Is that 5? Or do I get one more?
1, 2, 7, 8, 9. I think it's 6.
I said 1, 2, 4. Did I say 4? 1, 2, 4.
1, 2, 4.
1, 2. So there's no 4. So put a dot by the 4. And then I'm good. No.
So I'm not comfortable participating in this exercise. Like I'm not going to list 5. I'd be happy to share some thoughts, but if that's not something you want to hear, I'm also comfortable not sharing thoughts. But I'm not comfortable doing a straw poll.
It's not that I'm uncomfortable hearing it, but we have 3 people who aren't hearing it and can't, again, give us any feedback. That's just my opinion.
I would ask maybe Mayor Biss if I think the straw poll will tell us, for example, if there's something that has 6 people saying, yeah, I support that, there's some pretty strong consensus around that particular item. It's definitely a goal.
I would say for the sake of time, let's just keep going. He's not going to do it, so let's go to the next person.
I'm not sure how much we gain by getting down to 8 today. Because I know I have to leave in 5 minutes. But we could table this and into it.
So I'll put in my top 5. They're the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I will put in my top 5 as well. Certainly housing, equity, CARP, infrastructure. Come on, infrastructure. Nobody cares about the 100 million. So that is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finance. All right. Yep.
So it seems that I think at least 2 people have hard stops now. We're probably about to lose quorum. I think we should call it. I think we've accomplished a lot. I think it's very clear that we have important next steps. Certainly I'll huddle with Luke to think about dates. And we're happy to talk one-on-one or in small groups with any of you about kind of process, but I would argue that the next steps should come soon and that we should devote this kind of time to the next steps. That the next step is not going to be a 30-minute kind of quick wrap. It's going to be serious work. I think we've accomplished a lot, and yet we have a lot of the hard stuff is ahead. So with that, seeing nothing further to come before us, help me here, December 10th special meeting of the Evanston City Council stands adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, y'all.